Can you share more about, again, real-life use cases that you've encountered in your professional career that are around purpose-based access control?
Yeah, sure. I mean, quite a recent use case or use cases that we worked on was, clinical trials, for example. I worked for a large pharmaceutical company, and a lot of that is that information that is collected in a trial is used for a specific purpose. And you have to tell your clinical trial patient, for example, that we are collecting this data, it will be used for this particular purpose and maybe not for any other purpose. There is obviously a huge advantage of using some of that data, clearly for a secondary trial or a secondary purpose. But that is where we need to be careful that we're not just collecting data and using it. If you think of the clinical trial process, that you can benefit all patients all through this process. Usually they go through a number of stages, 4 stages typically in a clinical trial. And by allowing people to access that data at the different stages, and especially in the early stages, you can sometimes get to, I suppose, the results, or you can get to the insights a lot quicker, if you're targeting the right people at the right specific stage. But even if you can summarize somehow that data at the early stages, can then, maybe stop the company wasting money, or you can then change tact a little bit. And then you've got things like, I used to work in an insurance company, and fraud detection was a big thing, and sharing data with other insurance organizations, on specific fraudulent use cases, and maybe not anything else, but specific fraudulent use cases. I think this can help, really, because it's huge. So that's just maybe 2 examples that I see.
And you've mentioned, there's huge benefits, right, to collecting that data and running analysis on it. What do you see some of the risks being?
The people do need trust in data. We've come to a point where there's so much data that's incorrect as well, that you have to judge yourself, or the user of the consumer of that data has to make a judgment if they can trust this data, if they can then build insights or decisions on this data. And I think that when it comes to trust, I think, and so recently there's been a big huge to data products, as you probably know, that the data product concept in itself, brings a characteristic called trustworthiness, for example.
Have you seen examples during your career so far of companies that were really good at this, certain industries, for example, that were really good at this?
I think pharmaceuticals is really good at this. They have controls in place for a good reason. The history of pharmaceutical companies, I don't need to tell you, has been quite tainted over the past, because there's been a lot of abuse of trust. The sales techniques have been, let's say, dubious, highly, publicized, and I think that they've come a long way since those days. They've had to put those stringent controls in place, full transparency about everything, and I think that they are good at doing that now. I think that they still struggle with the, more of the data sharing technique. So there's a balance there. Clearly it's easier not to share data when it comes to security, and but does that really benefit anyone? No. I think that this is the key. Some of the larger organizations have huge departments, really responsible for controls, the way that data is getting used. They have data offices, they have chief data officers, but a lot of the smaller organizations just don't have that. Absolutely. And, I think that they need to now understand that, maybe they do need to invest a little bit more in these controls, these baked-in policies, the security, and they need to work with some experts that I think that really understand this, because it's only going to get bigger. The more and more data is going to come, ultimately you need to be responsible as a good data citizen. And I think that is the key for me, is getting that mindset to every single person working with data in an organization.